Hello everyone and welcome to Tax Shorts. My name is Ayesha Bedwei. I'm the tax leader here at PwC based in Ghana, and today we'll be talking about offshore indirect transfers. And I'm joined by my colleague Christiana Osei-Mensah, who's a senior manager in International Tax Business Unit. All right, so Christiana, please could you tell us a bit about offshore indirect transfers? What are they really about?
Thank you, Ayesha. Offshore indirect transfers. So an offshore indirect transfer is a technique used by some multinational corporations to dispose of indirectly the underlying assets of an entity that is normally tax resident in another country.
Okay. All right, so I'm getting from everything I've read so far in our practice that this is an issue in developing countries, right? Why is it so? Why is it a hot topic for developing countries like Ghana?
Most developing countries have specific or general tax rules which effectively tax direct transfers. Offshore indirect transfers, on the other hand, seems to be a challenge, and this has emerged as an issue of concern in most developing countries. This concern seems to be valid given the volumes of offshore indirect transfers that are undertaken by multinationals in these developing countries. There is also the issue of increased pressure on developing countries to increase their domestic revenue to support their national budgets. It is worth noting that this issue was actually, mentioned in the IMF as technical assistance work. However, it was not covered in the G20 project on BEPS.
Right.
That said, the platform for collaboration on taxes on the requests of the G20 developed a toolkit for the taxation of offshore indirect transfer. Okay. This toolkit is actually supposed to provide some form of guidance to developing countries on the taxation of offshore indirect transfers. Two standard or common models are mentioned in this toolkit. So there is the deemed disposal of assets on the resident entity and also the taxation of the non-resident. So these are the two models that were mentioned in the toolkit, or you will find most developing countries having this common models.
Okay, great. All right. That's quite a technical yes. piece of information. All right. So following on from that, does Ghana have any local specific tax provisions around the taxation of OITs?
Not up till the end of 2015. Ghana only had the general anti-avoidance rules. On 1st January 2016, Ghana introduced offshore indirect taxation in our Income Tax Act 896.
Great. All right. I think that's very clear. So are there any challenges with the provisions that we have in the tax laws as introduced?
Okay, so Ghana adopted the taxation of a deemed disposal on the resident entity. So what this does is that if there is an offshore indirect transfer, our laws, the way it is now, will deem a disposal of assets or a deemed gain where applicable on the local or on the resident entity. Now, what we have realized is that it had some challenges. The first challenge is cash flow issues. Most often than not, the resident entity here wasn't part of the transaction, and they may not have allocated any money or any fund for them to use to pay off any taxes on gains that comes up. So it poses a challenge. And one of the recommendations that we give is for the parties in these transactions when they undertake the offshore indirect to sort of put some money aside or fund the local entity to be able to meet their tax obligations. We also say that the Revenue Authority, which is a GRA, should also be open for discussions on some payment terms when the local entity is struggling to meet their tax obligations.
All right, okay. Well, this is quite a weighty topic, and I think even though we've discussed it in this short time, there's so much more to it. But I thank you very much, Christiana, for joining me today, and I'm sure we'll continue the conversation, perhaps in the second episode. Who knows? Let's see what happens. All right, thank you so much for joining us. Today we're talking about OITs. I was joined by my colleague, Christiana Osei-Mensah, who's a senior manager in our international tax team. My name is Ayesha Bedwei, the tax leader here at PwC Ghana. It's been a pleasure to host you all today. See you next time. Thank you and God bless.